Hello and welcome to our GA4 survival guide. Emily, could I ask you, oh, there you are. Hello. We'll introduce ourselves in a second. Thank you very much for joining us. If you've got any questions whilst we're going through this, just we're going to be quite informal, quite casual, hopefully answer lots of questions that people are having around GA4, share some experiences that our clients are having and experiences our team have had, because I know there's been a lot of change, and with any change can often come confusion and worry. So we'll be about 40 minutes. We'll share a copy of the recording afterwards, and yeah, just fire your questions in the Q&A or the chat and we'll try and get round to those as we go. So I'm John Redmond. I'm the founder and CEO of Ask Bosco, which is a marketing, reporting and AI platform. Emily, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Emily. I'm the Director of Product for Ask Bosco, so looking after the technology and all the people that sit underneath that.
So, and within Emily's team is a team of data scientists, data analysts, who between them have done, I wouldn't quite say hundreds, but certainly tens of GA4 migrations, GA4 audits, GA4 setups. So Emily and her team have got a wealth of experience in this. So we're going to go through some sort of common questions people have been asking. So data discrepancies, what are people seeing? Why are my metrics different? Why am I missing sort of reports that I used to have? How best to get more knowledge and upskill your team? Why is there such a data lag? Why is there a varying data lag? When will the data lag end? So there's lots of questions like that. And then we'll get into all about your channel groupings. How can we use GA4 for omni-channel reporting? Bit of feedback and thoughts around the interface. And if we get time, I'm starting to think, Emily, 10 might be a little bit of an ask, but if we don't get through these, we'll write up some notes and share them, or we can arrange another session. And we'll also summarize the findings from this in a short blog, which we will also share afterwards. So, and then, yeah, we're going to share some alternatives, because I think it's prompting lots of people to now look at, well, because GA and Google Analytics has been the default, but before that, people used to use Adobe Analytics, and people still do use Adobe Analytics, but is now the time that people will change how they track performance on their website. And we're going to share some alternatives that we see some clients using. So it's probably worth just doing a few polls to start with, just to get a flavour of where you're at with your sort of GA4 journey. So I'm going to just launch some polls. Oh, no, I'm not. So first of all, we're going to launch, do you prefer GA4 or Universal Analytics? So if you could just vote on that, and then we can see if you could all vote on that, and we can then get some sort of flavor of what's going on there. So yeah, this is common to what we see from most of our clients is, so yeah, we've got a split audience. So I'll end the poll and share the results. So we've got 86% don't prefer it and 14% do. And then I suppose the next question we were going to sort of ask you, and again, this can help determine how we frame the conversation this afternoon, is what do you find most frustrating about GA4? Oh, I've just ended the poll too quickly. Let me just go back and start that poll again. Right, so yeah, so what do you find most frustrating? So data delays, metric differences, finding what data you need, estimated totals, and then we can decide to maybe spend some more time discussing that when we get to those particular areas. So, and again, this is common to what we're finding from our clients, which is a lot of people are struggling to find the reports that they used to have and the reports that they'd built into their own internal management reporting and their own internal sort of trading reports and everything else. So 29% are saying data delays, 14% metric differences, but over 60% of you saying trying to find what data you need. So that does sort of reflect what we see from our other clients. So I should probably introduce who we are and who Ask Bosco is. Ask Bosco is a marketing AI platform that I launched about 3 years ago with the founder of Skyscanner, where we wanted to help what Skyscanner did for flight booking, we wanted to do for buying clicks. And really, we do this by empowering brands and retailers to save time and make more money. And we do that by connecting all your data together and all your channels together to give you omni-channel reporting, benchmarking, and AI-driven forecasting, and ultimately help you with attribution planning. And this is in the form of a SaaS platform, and ultimately it helps you increase your ROAS, save you time, and plan, reduce your cost over time, and plan better performance across all your campaigns. So not just Google, not just Facebook, but all your campaigns in one place. So we've got lots of wonderful clients who have reviewed us. So we've got over 100 different brands who use it and many different agencies. And so I suppose the proof's in the pudding there, really. Here's a sort of snapshot of some of those brands. There is a slightly bigger picture behind our business, which I'm sort of super proud of. We recently sent some of the team over to Uganda to see and meet and work with Bosco and help train those guys. We took over several laptops, which were kindly donated by our clients. And Bosco, which is the name of our technology, is actually the name of the man behind a charity in Jinja, Uganda, called One More Child. And he looks after 280 children who were street children who we've now empowered to change their lives through education, providing them with accommodation, school fees. And recently we actually got 2 of these guys got into cycling and are now representing Uganda. And they recently represented Uganda at the World Cycling Championships, which was amazing. The first time they've sort of actually ever been out of the country was as a professional cycling race. But that's a bit about a backstory. So we're a lot more than just marketing AI. But sometimes it feels like we're gambling with our budgets. And we built Ask Bosco to help you work out where to invest your next pound or dollar. And what we're sort of saying to anybody on the call today and on the workshop is, if you want a free GA4 audit, so which is worth over 1.5K, if you wanted to have a demo of Bosco, we will then not only give you the demo of Bosco, we will also get one of our data scientists, data specialists to have a look at your current GA4 setup or one of your clients' GA4 setups, because I know there's a few agencies on, and we can give you some tips, training, and support in improving the setup. So that's an offer just for people who are on now. So if you fill in that now, we can arrange, and someone will get in touch and arrange your free, one of Emily's team will get in touch and arrange your GA4 audit. So we need to get into the challenges. So I suppose this is now Emily's time to shine. So no pressure. I suppose in your view, or from what we think, why do we think Google have moved, or not just moved, forced us all to move to GA4? What's your sort of take on that?
Personally, I think it's because of the world that we currently live in, and I suppose the rules around privacy. And I think that they're only going to get more, there's only going to be more legislation, more rules around that. And I think Google are just preparing for that cookieless world. It's less about the user and it's more about your e-commerce website, the events on your website, as opposed to the individual users. So I think they haven't said that, but I just, from all of the noise around it, I think it's a move towards protecting themselves from a privacy point of view in terms of what data will be available. It's also good for them. They're becoming, a bit more of a black box, so you can kind of make a decision to stay with Google, and you become a bit more reliant on GA4, or you would pick an alternative at this stage. Whereas I think with UA it was a bit more flexible. You could see the data a bit more easily.
I do agree with all that, and I do think it's to protect themselves in the world without cookies. But I also think it's a clever move. If you think about Performance Max, they're sort of just say, give us your money, we'll spend it where we want, and then we'll measure it how we want and tell you what worked. So it's just becoming more and more. And I don't know if any of the people on saw that last week Google are actually starting to offer agency services for $40 an hour. So I do feel for the sort of smaller SME, small agencies, that because I've never been for a conversation with Google representing clients in the past where they've ever said spend more money with Facebook. They normally say spend more money with Google. So you can pay them $40 to an hour to tell you to spend more money with them. It'd be interesting to see in the chat what other people think, why Google's done this, and we can address those concerns. I also found it fascinating. We've been trying to educate clients for over 18 months about GA4's coming. And even with a week before it was due to be sunset, people were still phoning us up and saying—
A day before. Days before, the day of, afterwards.
Yeah, we're not naming and shaming anybody, Emily.
No, not naming and shaming at all. We in the team specifically put some time aside, just because we knew that these calls were going to happen. And I think, you know, being aware of the data previously, so some of our other clients kind of got ahead of it. We helped them. They were able to compare their numbers in June, for example, so they could see the difference between UA and GA4 before it happened. So they were able to have the right conversations and kind of set the business expectation. Whereas, you know, just moving over from the 1st of July, if people hadn't had those conversations and the numbers were changing around a little bit, it becomes a bit harder to explain that.
Yeah, so I'm going to sort of bring up the things that a lot of people have been talking about, a lot of clients. So what have we been seeing with data discrepancies? What have been the sort of observations we've seen?
So I think this is probably one of the, especially from our side, so from an Ask Bosco side, this is quite a frustrating one in terms of data discrepancy. So GA4, like you said, obviously they're making, they are adding different levels of filtering, audience, their own signals. So they've got the GA4 signals, they're adding on all these additional layers of data within the interface. So, you know, that's great. And if everybody gets on board with GA4 and you understand it, that'll give a lot of, you know, information back to your business. However, if you want to take that data and pass it back through any other APIs, plug it into any other system, you lose all of that filtering and all of that, you know, additional audience data and the Google signals, because they're not passing any of that information back through the API. So I don't know about you, but one of my frustrations and the team frustrations is we don't need yet another set of numbers to look at. We already have platform data that doesn't, you know, never matched up with UA data, the different attribution models. You've then got GA4, and now the API data, the raw data from GA4 doesn't match up with the interface either. So there's going to be a lot more conversations for data teams, data engineers, data analysts, you know, marketeers having these conversations as to why these numbers don't add up all the time or match each other between the different systems. And I think that's just a boring conversation for everyone, really.
I suppose it highlights the need over time to just agree which data sources are you using as a single source of truth, and then how are you getting them into some sort of reporting, and then what are you doing around using that within the business to make decisions, because you used to be able to use that and now you've got to use something different.
Yeah, so it either, I suppose, you know, retailers, businesses, it either brings the conversation completely to a head and you pick which direction you're going to go, otherwise it just muddies the water even more and you just add another data set in there, which, you know, and those types of decisions don't happen overnight in terms of picking a single source of truth. You know, it takes ages.
Yeah, okay. And have people lost their year-on-year data, or can they still get access to that? What's the situation around that?
So the year-on-year data is still in UA at the moment. Obviously, what we've recommended is a lot of our clients have downloaded that into BigQuery, and we've obviously got it also in, you know, Ask Bosco. We pulled the last 2 years of data, so our clients have a seamless, you know, transition between those two date points. But yeah, I would definitely recommend getting that data for yourself.
Yeah. So, and then what are so not only is the data different, we're measuring it differently. So what are the sort of metric differences that we've observed?
So there's a few different points here. I think the most common one, and the one that people are talking a lot about online, is the bounce rate. So bounce rate, as we know, or as we knew it, has completely gone. So there isn't now a bounce rate. And one of the reasons for this, it kind of links into the data discrepancies as well, is that one of the fundamental changes of GA4 is that they've moved. UA was a session-based methodology, so all of the reporting was based on sessions, whereas GA4 is based on events. So they look at events and how users engage with your web page, your website, and that's how bounce rate has changed. So obviously, from a negative point of view, you can't use the original bounce rate metric as a benchmark in terms of future performance and how you're performing. However, I would say some of the benefits are, you've got all these additional engagement metrics. So actually what they are showing you is an engagement metric based on bounce rate. So it's if somebody has clicked through onto your website, but the difference is, bounce rate might have been 80% before, it'll be down to 20%, that type of thing, because they've kind of flipped the formula around.
So being able to compare, so suddenly bounce rate hasn't improved, it's just a completely different way of measuring it.
Yeah, so it's more about engagement rate of you on the website as opposed to someone bouncing off. And there's a few different definitions. So they don't even class somebody on your web page. I think it's like you have to have been on the page for over 10 seconds or completed 2 things on the page before they then would consider you actually engaged with the page. So obviously if you land and just bounce straight off, that isn't captured anymore. And obviously we, as e-commerce and retail people, we know that there was the whole, maybe 5 years ago, it's probably a bit old now, but there was the whole 3-second rule around websites, around if you haven't, got a pet website loaded within 3 seconds, then you kind of, your history. So obviously if Google aren't classing someone as engaged as up to 10 seconds, that's quite a long time for someone to wait, really.
So I suppose if people are just looking at historical traffic numbers, their traffic will look completely different as well now.
Yes, yeah. So, and that also links into the estimated total. So obviously that's another thing that Google are doing, because they're using a lot of the algorithmic based methodology. They're doing a lot of estimated totals to kind of fill in the gaps, which sometimes means that the totals don't always add up because they're estimating what's going to happen as opposed to what's actually happened.
Okay.
Which makes it clearer as well.
Yeah, and I suppose there's an interesting thing is everybody's sort of got used to what they're used to. And we've had a lot of change. And I remember actually when Mike, one of our head of our data analytics team, first logged in ages ago to GA4, he says there's nothing in there. So yeah. What do you get? What don't you get? And why is everything that I used to have missing?
Yeah, so actually as part of our GA4 setups, we actually spent some time. You could have an additional part of that, which was us setting up and helping you set up some of the original reports that were in UA. GA4, Google in general, I think they've made a really big push towards customization. So they're giving people the free will to be able to build the types of reports that they want for their business. This is why obviously everything's event based as well. So you can set up every single event that you want to track from a GA4 point of view. And obviously then you can customize the reports on top. Everyone will know. So for example, from a UA point of view, it was more out of the box solution. So I think I was doing some research before this, and I don't know how many reports there are off the top of my head in these systems, but on UA, apparently there were 30 different acquisition reports. So I mean, we all knew there was a lot, but there were actually 30. Whereas now it's really obvious when you log in, there's 3 different acquisition reports. So in terms of the scale back there is quite big. In some ways, I think this can be helpful. Like, it does take a more additional time, but it means that you can have really customizable reporting, especially if you're a bigger brand and you're able to put in that time, invest the time to be able to build those reports. People who I do think are missing out on some of the out of the box services are smaller brands, even people like bloggers, for example, freelance people who are doing their own stuff or running their own businesses. They kind of rely on those out of the box reports from UA to be able to understand how their business is performing. They're not just the data analytics or marketing person, they're actually the CEO, founder, COO, finance, HR, they're doing absolutely everything for their business. So they don't have time to necessarily dedicate to GA4 to be able to build all the reports that were once there, really.
And do we think once everybody gets used to it, it's a better place? And are we getting stressed over change?
I think there's some things that we're getting a bit stressed over change for, but I would say these first three, so data discrepancies, metric differences, and some missing reports, are actually quite annoying. I think, and over time we will see, you know, Google might add to their reporting suite. We just don't know yet, do we?
And then I suppose this leads nicely on to what's one of the biggest concerns that we're regularly seeing, and I suppose the increased calls to our sort of support desk and everything, is there's clearly a knowledge gap. And I suppose how if you're a marketer on here, or if you're an agency on here, how can you go about upskilling your team, getting the knowledge you need? What are the sort of different options that we can look at?
Yeah, especially first at the beginning of the whole GA4 launch, there has been quite a bit of criticism at Google of the lack of support that they've been able to give to people. And I know I've got numerous clients that are waiting on issues that are being raised with Google with, you know, GA4 around tracking and things like this, and they're just not getting resolved. You know, you're on a ticket and it could take however long. This does mean, you know, you need to do some knowledge and upskilling. Using third-party sources has been the predominant way in which we've done it. Also just getting stuck in and actually using the platform on behalf of our clients. You need to invest the time in, you know, as we were saying, setting up the actual reports. You need to be able to understand that the time to set things up is way higher than what it was from a UA perspective. The other thing is that there's key functionality that's been pushed into, for example, Google BigQuery, Google Tag Manager. So your tracking has to be a lot more precise and set up really well in terms of the events-based tracking system. So knowing how to kind of set up all of these other elements are actually really important, and kind of using the full Google stack is more important as well in a GA4 world. So our team, we've got Charlie, who is a newer member of our team, but he's spent a lot of time working within GA4, you know, getting to grips with Google Tag Manager, Google BigQuery, and they're kind of the three key products that he's kind of focusing on, I would say, at the moment, and it's taken up a lot of his time.
If I'm another agency, or if I'm an in-house team on the call, or I just want to get better, is there like a certificate or a badge I can get and share to the world that I'm now a GA4 expert? What's the sort of recognition of my newfound skills?
Yeah, so there are GA4 qualifications. So a lot of our team have been completing those and working through those. And they're, you know, like the UA certificate, there is the GA4 certification that you can go and get.
Yeah, okay. This is something I know has been really frustrating everybody, because we were getting sort of quite used to not quite real-time reporting, but reasonably accurate, up to date, certainly hours and days. But I think what we're seeing and what's happening, and how long's the lag going to lag for?
So this is just annoying. Like, you know, you're asking before whether we need to put up with it or not. I think we need a petition for the data lag that's going on in GA4. It's ridiculous. So it used to be 4 hours. Everyone was really happy, able to look at their data every 4 hours. You know, we were living in this lovely world. The data lag now is between 12 to 24 hours. In terms of whether it's going to be 12 or 24, you just don't know, and that could change on a daily basis. This has been caused by the data volume that's going into GA4 and the complexity of the configuration that they're adding on top. So because they're doing all the Google signals and all of the different additional pieces of information, it just takes a little bit longer to pull through. This also makes it difficult for like third-party tools, for example, like that you're taking data from, because obviously if you're collecting data and it's not actually up to date in GA4, that causes problems. So that just means you've got different numbers everywhere in terms of like the interface, your own reports, just everywhere. Yeah, it isn't ideal, and it's something we hope that Google will be able to look at. At the moment, obviously they're still supporting, you know, their GA 360 customers as well, so the paid for customers for another year. Hopefully if they sunset that, they'll be able to put a bit more time, bit more resource into, you know, being able to sort out from a data perspective the amounts of data that they're collecting through GA4 and potentially improve that data lag situation. It's either that or we all just do our Monday reporting at lunchtime. So and all the trading meetings need to move.
Yeah, is that so what is it, or what are we seeing? Is it 5 hours, 6 hours? Is there any sort of consistent window, or is it we just don't know?
There really isn't a consistent window. It's 12 to 24 hours up to. We have made a decision. So we used to do a lot of our data checks early on the morning for our clients. There's just no point in doing that at the moment. So we do it at midday, just to ensure, because basically we were checking things on the morning, it was wrong, checking again by lunchtime, and it was fixed. And this is just because of the data lag. So, you know, there are things that you can do, you know, practical things, as in moving meetings, moving the time that you do your reporting. But unfortunately, we're just, you know, we're definitely in Google's hands when it comes to the data lag situation.
Okay. Yeah, well, let's start the petition. Let's do it.
Yeah, I don't even know if it would be a petition. I'm not quite sure, but there needs to be something.
We should start a revolution.
I had some clients that were a week delay on data. That was I was speaking to a retailer last week. I couldn't believe it. They put a ticket in and are still waiting back to hear from Google, because they don't actually know. Google themselves don't know what's going on. But I just couldn't believe it when they said.
Yeah, that's I'm not. It's not quite as bad as the air traffic control disaster, but it's not far off. But yeah, and I think it's also not fair if people are making big decisions about how they run their business. You need to have the data and the insight enabled to make those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, we've not even got, because obviously it's been launched over summer, but we've not got to, you know, some key peak retail times. I mean, Black Friday and things like this. The types of delays that we're experiencing now are typically the delays that you would experience for a 3-day period, from like Black Friday to Cyber Monday, not just in everyday life. So potentially, how much worse is that going to be at the key times?
It'll be interesting to see if this has had a negative effect or positive, depending on how people have done it, on people's ad spend. Have they pulled back because they don't know what's going on, or are they still just going for it? It'd be interesting looking at, say, year-on-year data to see what happened. So other questions and things that we often get asked. So channel groupings, how do we deal with that now in GA4?
This is just more of a heads up. So GA4 can group the channels differently, and it all comes down to your tracking and making sure that you've got the source and medium set up correctly and how you want to have that. We would recommend a GA4 audit, either audit it yourself or, you know, for example, take up the free audit today. But yeah, it's really, you need to understand the channel groupings, because that's where sometimes some of the data discrepancies are actually coming from the way that people have got GA4 set up, as opposed to GA4 just being set up that way. If that makes sense, you can actually reduce some of the discrepancies from the, you know, between UA to GA4 by just setting up correctly, if you wanted to, you know, keep your setup the same between the systems.
But it sounds like, and again, we've had this anecdotal feedback from different clients and other people we've helped, but I think it sounds also like what you're saying, Emily, is if you aren't really adept with data platforms and tracking, you can't just log into GA4 and it's obvious what to do.
No, and it's not just the channels just aren't set up, you know, as we would have experienced in UA as either. So you have to really sort of educate yourself on that to understand where things are going.
Right. So it's almost like watch some videos, get some training, get some help, then go and do it, rather than going
don't expect metrics and channels and everything to just follow the same like lexicon or the same, like, basically GA4 is like, it's a whole different dictionary with different definitions, is how I would describe it. So read it, read about it.
Is it like the difference between French and English, or the difference between English and Chinese?
No, I wouldn't say quite as far as those extremes, but there's definitely nuances, I would say. Maybe American English and English.
All right, not too bad then.
Not too bad.
So how would we deal with omni-channel reporting? Because I know Google was trying to do a lot more of that before. What's happening in GA4?
So there is a lack of visibility with conversion paths for like multi-channel funnel activity, which obviously can be frustrating. Again, this is because of the events-based methodology as opposed to sessions-based. This one is really difficult. In terms of, obviously, I mean, it's going to link on to a point that we've got coming up later as well, you know, attribution, which is, you know, I'm really interested to see how it impacts attribution. But obviously, omni-channel reporting, what we can do is you can set up custom reports in GA to be able to understand these behaviours, you just have to do them in a different way. And like I said before, everything's named slightly differently, so it isn't necessarily just your omni-channel funnel, it's about your engagement metrics and how that flows through your website. But it is possible to set it up, it's just a few additional steps. Also, which links on to the next point we're going to mention, the interface is also linked to the omni-channel reporting, in the sense that you can't have, it's not easy to do that kind of the same filtering and segmentation that you would easily have been able to do in UA. It's much more, you know, you have to, you know, dedicate some real time to going and setting those reports up.
Right, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do my Facebook numbers now match up in GA4 with Facebook?
No.
No. So it doesn't fix that.
No, it doesn't fix that.
Yeah.
This is what I was talking about at the beginning, in terms of it's just another set of metrics.
Yeah.
To add into the mix.
Yeah. So not only are we taking it just makes that whole Facebook measurement thing even more complex.
Yeah, I think from an omni-channel reporting point of view, I think if you're wanting to really get into the depths of that, I would potentially consider looking at a different, you know, tool and some other alternatives rather than GA4.
Okay. So what do we like? Do we like anything about the interface? Let's give GA4 some love. Is there any positive?
Well, this is one of the ones I was going to say. I think this is more of a marketing or marketeer's problem as opposed to a GA4 problem, and it's just because we don't really like change. So we've had the report set up the way that we've had the report set up for so many years now, and we've got so used to it. I actually messaged one of my friends this morning, told her I was doing a GA4 webinar this afternoon because she works obviously in the marketing space. I just said to her, do you like GA4? And she said, no, it's an absolute nightmare. But she said, I think I need to just get over it, because it's more that I don't like change as opposed to like GA4's done anything wrong. But yeah, it's just that it's a nightmare type phase. However, some of the things around the filtering and the segmentation and being able to select things and select boxes to make the reports or to see the views, it's more the view side of things. So in UA, it was really good. You were able to select a few things, you could see views, and they were building and developing on the fly. Whereas in GA4, it's much more report based. It is meaning it's taking a lot more time for people. So people are saying that it is taking more time. Again, what we have to hope around like the missing reports, the interface and things like this, is that Google will continue to build and improve the product since it's launched. I don't know if anybody had early access to GA4 who's on the webinar today, but actually if you look at the GA4 that was available even like January, April time this year compared to what they launched with, it did get better. It's still not great, but it was a lot better than what was originally there. So we've just got to hope that they're constantly working on improving the product.
And I suppose that this is raised the questions of what else could you use, or should I just take all my data out by the API, stick it into BigQuery and build my own report?
Well, that's one of the solutions. So you can do that. Obviously, you can use Ask Bosco. So obviously, we have our reporting dashboards within Ask Bosco. We take data from it doesn't have to just be GA4. We take it from GA4 platforms, BigQuery, anywhere that you need us to take it from. But then actually, because of working more on the Ask Bosco side of things, we have actually seen in the last, I would say, 6 months, more alternatives to GA4. So people using like Heap, analytics, people using Microsoft.
You're getting on to number 10.
Sorry, people using Microsoft Clarity and things like this, but they're using those tools, as well to actually get their data rather than GA4.
Do we think we're going to see? Well, we've been over the last 5 or 6 years proactively migrating people away from Adobe Analytics because people have hated it. Is there an argument to go back to Adobe Analytics, or is that still worse?
Potentially Adobe Analytics. I do think that there's newer alternatives that are going to be a bit more agile than like Adobe and things like this. So like I was mentioning, Heap, Microsoft Clarity, these are the types of tools that we're seeing come through, and they're not as expensive as something like Adobe to implement either.
Yeah. But I suppose if you change how you're tracking everything, then you've got to think about your cookies, you've got to think how you tag everything, and I suppose just Google tends to make that easy, so you're sort of
but with GA4 you've got to learn like a little bit more about Google Tag Manager and tracking and things like this anyway, so kind of maybe it saves a bit of time, but I think this goes back to just picking a destination and kind of sticking with it, picking a single source of truth.
And is because I know GA4 is meant to work for everybody, whether you're retail or whether you're travel or whether you're B2B. From sort of our experience, is there a slant where we think, well, actually, this is more for big e-commerce, or it's more for travel, or it's more for B2B, or what's your sort of view on that?
I do think it's for large clients. Like, for example, big e-commerce, B2B, the lead gen and the whole event setup and things like this, I do think is probably going to be better. If you embrace GA4, it's got some really great filtering on top. However, I wouldn't recommend, like I said, I don't think it's an out of the box solution for smaller businesses, maybe individual people, bloggers, that type of thing, unless you've got the time to properly dedicate to actually understand the reports that you're looking at. I don't think it suits those type of people. And obviously before with UA, you had great functionality, the free version, and then you had Google 360 that had, additional information for kind of the larger brands. I don't really feel like Google have catered to like two different groups at the moment. It's, one size fits all, and I think the fit seems to be the bigger players at the moment.
Yeah, we've just had some questions come in, one actually on attribution, but I'll get you to talk about GA4 and can it help us with attribution, and then one of the questions actually, if I have a large spend on ads in different platforms, and I used to use a sort of a universal analytics attribution model, what do I do now? But I suppose you could combine that with what's going on with attribution in GA4.
Yeah, we'll do number 9, which is just attribution. So obviously GA4 has moved to a bit of another sort of black box, data-driven attribution. So we are in Google's hands if you use the data-driven attribution in terms of how your numbers get allocated across different channels and kind of understanding that mix. At the moment, we've got a lot of clients that are using the data-driven attribution from GA4, and they're just going to kind of see how it goes for the next few months before considering doing like a larger attribution project potentially with another supplier. The reason for that is because we actually don't know yet. We don't know what we don't know. So people need to, kind of take a look at the GA attribution and really, the data-driven attribution, and really see how that actually affects the business numbers first before making a decision as to whether they believe that is something that works for them or doesn't work for them. The thing with, I think someone's just asked as well about changing the data attribution model in GA. You can do that, but you have to do that at full account level. So before in UA, you were able to, select different attribution models, last click, different models, linear, for example, and you could also use that module where you could compare them, which was quite a handy module, especially when explaining different numbers to people, why they all look different. That was a really helpful module. You can't do that in GA4 now, so there isn't any comparison between the two. The default is set to the GA4 data attribution, and then obviously if you came out of that at the account level, you can change it, but it would go back down and change all of the numbers in your account. So there's no comparison there that's easy at all.
Yeah, and so I suppose if I wanted to do attribution, it's get it all out, do some proper thinking, and sort of measure it separately with some clever people.
Yeah, get the raw numbers out, which is what you do have in the API. Like I said, it doesn't pass any of the GA4 signals or filtering through to the API. Take it all out and give it to somebody else to take a look at, and then department heads can have an argument of how channels have been attributed afterwards.
And I suppose overall, I suppose the view we've always had is an attribution model is better than last click wins. But I suppose the question soon is going to be, is data-driven attribution better than last click wins? And my question is, do I spend more with Google on data-driven attribution? Right?
Potentially. These are all the things that we need to wait to see what happens. Like we've had conversations in the past, John, Google are making everything a bit more, they're putting up the walls around everything. So obviously if you believe the Google numbers, is it going to favour the Google landscape?
I think it's just going to, so we're getting Google's, it's a bit like putting your teenager in an off license, not expecting them to get drunk. But I think it's, they're going to be marking their own homework, and they're going to probably make themselves look better than maybe they are, but we've got no way of knowing.
Yeah.
Potentially. That would be the cynics for you if you were anti-Google. So if you were Kelco and you wanted to have a bit of a Google bash, that's sort of where and I do think it's going to be interesting over time. Are people going to stop trusting the Google products and the Google stack and actually look at alternatives like the Heaps of the world? I know we've got a few clients now who want to connect Heap to Asposco, and we've got the connectors and we can do that. But it's just going to be interesting, I think. So we're running out of time, Emily, as we thought we might do. So I think in summary, we're saying if you haven't got your GA4 set up properly in the way you want it, get some help.
Or even if you have got it set up, but you're just seeing a few discrepancies, I would just get an audit. Just like, honestly, just get an audit. The reason the clients that we're picking up now more from GA audits and things like this are just people who, you know, they've had the data running for a month now. It's still, you know, not quite just fitting. Let's just take a look at it, and it, you know, it literally could be that
I'm just worried, Emily. There's quite a lot of people on the webinar, and I don't know how many audits Mike and the team are going to have to be doing if we're giving away all these. Don't encourage everybody to get the free audit.
Just get an audit.
Yeah, and then I suppose the other thing is this is the new normal. So we've just got to get used to it and get good at it. And I suppose that's the message, isn't it? Is we've got to sort of get over ourselves and spend some time, allocate some time to get good at it. And learn it, and then integrate that and review how do we report back to the wider business. Do we need to change our trading meetings? Do we need to change how we report internally? Are we now measuring different metrics? So
yeah, and we need to rely on that. I would say you're naturally data enthusiastic people. I would say we've definitely relied on our data analytics and data engineering team over the last, you know, well, always, but I would say certainly in the last 4 months, you know, in terms of completing training and things like this for the wider team, because they are more naturally analytical. They, you know, picking up new tools and software as part of their job. So definitely utilize those people within your business.
Yeah, so we'll send around the recording, we'll send around some notes, but if you would like a free audit, I'm worried we're going to just be doing free audits for the next 3 months. If you book a demo with us, we will happily do you a full GA4 audit and give you the results of how to fix it. So all you have to do is go to askbosco.io/demo or get your smartphone out and scan that QR code. So that's been our, oh, hang on, we got another question. We'll pick that one up later. It's just one from one of our guys. Yeah, so thank you very much for joining us. So we will send everything round, and if you need anything at all, just I'm john@askbosco.com or emily@askbosco.com, and we'll happily answer any of your questions. Thank you very much, and see you next time.